Okay, we will go ahead and get started. If people are still joining, they can just join us as we get going here. First of all, I'd like to say hello and everyone, and thank you for taking the time out of your day today to join us. My name is Joe Gupser with Martin and Associates. We're excited to welcome you to our presentation today on what's new in Sage 100 version 2021. Before we get started today, though, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping items first. This presentation is being recorded, and a link will be sent to the recording in the next few days if you wanted to watch it again or have anybody from your office watch it. Please use the Zoom chat feature to ask any questions that might come up that you might have during the presentation. And we plan to answer the questions received at the end of the demo. So go ahead and send those in, and we will see them. And once we get through the PowerPoint presentation, I have it first here, and then we're going to dive into the product and look at that a little bit more. So once that part's done, we'll circle back and take care of any questions that people might have. So let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. Again, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to cover what's new in version 2021. And here's kind of the agenda of what we're going to cover today. So I first want to take a look back and look at some features that were in the 2020 version first. So we'll spend a little time looking at that, and then we will move forward and discuss the newest features in the 2021 version. And then once we kind of go through them, we will jump into the software and kind of look at some of these features in action, some of the nicer ones in action. And then we'll wrap up with a question and answer at the end for any questions that you guys might have. Okay, so let's discuss some of the new 2020 features first. And you're going to see in this presentation, some of these features are going to be marked as subscription only. And what that means is there's a difference between the Sage 100 subscription licensing and the Sage 100 perpetual license. And if you're on a subscription license, then that means that the feature that says subscription only will be available in your system. If you're not on a subscription license and you're still on the old perpetual license that Sage used to have, then that means that particular feature will not be available. And if it doesn't say anything, it will mean that it's available in both the subscription and the perpetual. I can't 100% guarantee that I got everything flagged correctly as subscription, but I'm pretty sure that the majority of the ones that are subscription only I have identified in the presentation here. Okay, so the first one is a nice right off the bat. It's the ability to reverse an entire AP check run. So this comes into play where, let's say you're running a bunch of AP checks, you update the check register, and then you realize after the fact that, oh man, I didn't mean to update that check register, had the wrong date, had the wrong check numbers, whatever, and now we need to go through and reverse all those checks. In prior versions, prior to 2021 or prior to 2020, you had to go through a manual check entry and one at a time kind of reverse all those checks out. In the 2020 version, they added an option to reverse an entire AP check run. So whether it's one check or 200 checks, it will reverse all of them for you at one time with this new feature. And we'll look at some of these as we get into the software here in a minute. International customers are easier to track. They basically have expanded the lengths for the cities, the states, the phone numbers, and the extensions all throughout the system. They've also expanded the customer number and the the customer names and the contact name fields inside the system as well. And this will help make international addresses a lot easier, 2020 and above, because of the length of some of those fields. There is now support for international phone number formatting as well. And the country code field has been added to the zip code. When you set up your zip codes, there's a country code field in there now, and this will let you be able to use that same zip code across multiple countries if that is needed in your business. Okay. All right. Next, is another, pretty nice feature of the system is the ability to receive multiple purchase orders on a single receipt of goods or invoice. And again, this is another subscription only feature. And I think it was 2019 version of the software, they added the ability to invoice multiple sales orders on the same invoice to your customers. So now in the 2020 version, they're putting that functionality in there on the APPO side. So when you do a receipt of goods for a vendor now and multiple POs are on that receipt, you can do all those on one single receipt now. Where prior to this release in this feature, you had to do a receipt for each PO. So if multiple POs got shipped together, you had to do 2 receipts in the system and break them out when you did the receipt. In the setup options of both the accounts payable and the accounts receivable modules, there always was a field that was number of days to retain paid invoices. They have now changed that on the subscription only side to be able to say number of months to retain these paid invoices. And that determines how long it will show up on your vendor maintenance and your customer maintenance screens when you look at the invoices tab and you see 0 balance invoices. How many months do you want those to stay out there before it starts purging them off and clearing up that clutter on that screen? When Sage went to their new desktop interface a number of versions back, they still left the classic desktop out there as an option for people if they still wanted to run the old interface, the old desktop. That has now been retired on the 2020 version of the software. So you can no longer run the classic desktop anymore. Lot and serial number expiration dates. So if you're a company that deals in lot items or serialized items, you can now have expiration dates on those lot and serial numbers. So it helps with a lot more tracking of that inventory out there to know if these lots or serials are expired. And that's a subscription only feature. Finishing up on some of the 2020 new features here, some custom office enhancements. So in custom office, if you don't know, there's the ability to, in custom office is a module that comes with the system. There's the ability to create user-defined fields, or UDFs they're called. And these are UDFs are where you want to track additional information about an entity that the system does not provide by default. So in customer maintenance, for instance, you might have some additional fields that you want to track for your customers that the system doesn't provide by default. You could create UDFs for those fields and add them to the screen. And it looks just like a regular field that customer maintenance has. Prior to 2020, you had to have everybody out of the system when you created those UDFs because it compiles the databases and those files are locked when people are in the system. Starting in 2020, you have the ability to schedule these UDF changes to happen at a later time. So you can go ahead and make the changes, tell it to run at a later time, and it will happen. You can run in the evening when nobody's in. There's also some WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get editing, where you have the ability to drag and drop UDF fields and columns and resize columns inside of the grids for users if you're making changes out there or adding new fields out there. And you also have the ability to do some masking on UDFs when you create them. So if one of the UDFs you're creating is containing some sensitive information that you don't want visible for everyone who's looking at the system, you can encrypt that to where you could star out certain parts of that so only a little bit of it's seen or none of it's seen or whatnot. Now, this is only masking. This is an important thing here. This is only masking the data on the display. It's not actually encrypting the data. So that's a key difference there. So on the back-end database side, the data is still out there the way you typed it in. So if anybody can report off of those fields and whatnot, they'll still see the unmasked data. It's just masking it on the interface. Okay. So let's move on to some 2021 features, and then we'll jump into the software here. So some global changes out there. How did that go away? All right, some global changes out there. There has been a company type field added to company maintenance. Okay, so when you're in company maintenance, you can now identify whether a company is a live company, an archive company, a demo company, or a test company. Okay, prior to that, you just had companies listed out there, and there was no differentiation of whether it was a test company or a live company or whatnot. So that now is an available field. And then there are also display options inside the system configuration so in the preferences tab and system configuration, there's check boxes for each company type of whether you want that to display in the Windows title bar. And you can select one or all of these check boxes to have that type display after the company code if you want. Some enhancements in Library Master to the security. Also, there is in-role maintenance. There has been an option added of whether or not a user that has a particular role can delete or overwrite companies. Okay, so if you check the allow, delete, /overwrite live archive companies checkbox, then when a user tries to either delete a company that's live or archived, or they try to copy over top of that company, a message will come up confirming that they really intend to do that. So it's going to warn them still, but they have the ability to say, yes, I really mean to do this, and move forward. If that role that's assigned to a user does not have that checked, then when they try and delete and or override a live company from copying from another company, it will tell them that they don't have the ability to do that. So this is all added just to kind of prevent accidental copying of your overwriting of your companies, basically. Also in Library Master, they have enhanced the security a little bit. So there are predefined role templates that have been created to make it easier when creating roles. Okay, there have been role maintenance has been enhanced to allow you to quickly assign and remove users to roles and apply changes to multiple roles. On the templates I was talking about, there's about 2 per module that they've created by default out there for you as templates that you can copy to other roles. There's added enhanced searching and filtering capabilities to help you find these tasks and security options more easily when you're looking for them, to try and say whether or not people can get into them or not. And then, as I mentioned before, you have the ability to add and remove users from roles inside of role maintenance. The next bullet here is the build search index for specific company types. So I'm sure you've seen the feature in Sage 100 when you're in item maintenance, or on the item field, the customer field, or the vendor field. If you start typing in on that number field, the item number, or sorry, the item name or the vendor name or the customer name, you'll start seeing filtering on a drop-down box, customer numbers or vendor numbers or item numbers that match what you're typing in for the description. You can now, on the rebuild of that search index, you can tell it to only rebuild for certain company types. So if you have a lot of archive companies out there that you're not doing any data in, or test companies, there's no need of waiting for the rebuild of all those search indexes to go through all those archive companies. You could just run it for your live companies and kind of be done with it. And you also have the ability of scheduling this rebuild a search index as well on the task scheduler to run every evening, every so often, however you want that to happen. When you're in company maintenance and you're copying companies, copying a company from one company to another. So let's say you're copying a live company to a test company. You're refreshing your test company. When you do that, you have the option to not only copy the company data, In prior versions, you had the option of copying your form data over. Now in 2021, you also have the option to copy report settings over as well. So if you have specific report settings out there on some of your standard Sage 100 reports, you can copy those over to the company you're copying to. Okay. And this feature here is a subscription only feature. You have the ability to print all the sales order recap reports all at once. So instead of running through those one at a time, just with one click, you now have the ability to run all those reports at the same time. That is a subscription only field or a subscription only feature. The purchases clearing report. So for those who aren't familiar, the purchases clearing report is a report that shows you goods received, not invoiced, or goods invoiced and not received yet. Okay. And this report is intended to reconcile and balance your purchases clearing GL account out in General Ledger. Prior to the 2021 version, that report was only current as of when you ran it. So it was a point in time report. So when you ran it, that was the data at that point. You couldn't go back and say, okay, I'm on June 17th. What did my purchases clearing report look like on May 31st? You didn't have the ability of doing that. They now have added that feature in 2021. So it's a very nice feature when you're trying to reconcile that GL account out there. Out in inventory management, there's the ability to default the date range for transactions. And this is a subscription only feature. So you can define the default date range you can define the date range that it's going to use for the selection in the transaction date search default selection field that has been added out in inventory options on the additional tab. When you're reviewing transactions, you can change the default date range by clicking on the search button and putting in different criteria. But this would just default for you when you first go to those options of what date range it's looking at. So that kind of helps you out if you have a lot of history out there, a lot of years, and you don't want all that to kind of load and search by default. You can define what your date ranges are. The Sage 100 Utilities menu, which is a hidden option when you go File, Run, and type in *UTL. It now allows for the ability to clear erroneous AP and AR payment today flags. So if you guys have been using Sage 100 for for a while now, I'm sure at some point in time you've run into the issue where you're trying to pay a check in AP and it tells you that the check's already being paid, or pay an invoice in AP and it's trying to tell you that the invoice is already being paid, or it doesn't show up to be selected. Or when you're in accounts receivable, cash receipts, and you're trying to do a cash receipts, an invoice shows up, but it has a $0 balance, even though in customer maintenance, it still has a balance. That's because at some point you probably dropped a network connection while you were working with those records, and those flags got left as being in data entry, basically. So there's utility out there for you to clear those. The new NEC 1099 non-employee compensation form is now available in the purchase order. In bank reconciliation, it allows the ability to exclude wire transfers from the Positive Pay export when you run that. So when you run the Positive Pay export wizard, you can specify whether to include those wire transfers when the file is created or not. And then one last page here, and then we'll actually jump into the software and look at some of these. Here's another couple subscription only features that were added. Expanded email options. So OAuth is now offered to authenticate SMTP email requests. Customers who use this email, who use email providers like Gmail or Outlook, which require a two-step authentication, can now use those email providers directly inside of the Sage 100 system more easily. Improve record keeping capabilities. This is dealing with paperless office, and when you're sending sales orders, purchase orders, invoices, or other documents through custom office, there is now a detailed log to help you confirm whether these emails were sent without issues or not, or whether they were successful. There's now support for PDFs, Word docs, JPEGs, and other file types to be associated with our the journals and registers as well. All right, so that is kind of it for the the PowerPoint presentation part. I am sitting now inside of Sage 100, and I'm running version 2021. And I'll use this to kind of look at all the features I want to kind of show you here, whether it's a 2020 feature or a 2021 feature. So one of the features we talked about that I think is a pretty nice one is the ability to reverse an entire AP check run. So where that's located at is underneath of Accounts Payable module, down underneath of the Utilities menu, there is this option called Reverse Check Run. And when you select this, it'll come up and ask you, how you want to reverse. You want to select by bank code or check number, or you want to select by source journal and register number. So it's depending on where you have that, how you know that information. So I'm going to say by bank code and check number, and I'm going to say bank code D. And if you know the check number, you can key it in, or you can click on the lookup, and you'll see all the checks listed out there. And I know I did a check run that had check number 18 in it. I want to reverse that entire check run. So if I select that, it'll load for me down bottom all the checks that were in that check run. And it's going to tell me down here at bottom, I have 3 checks that will be reversed. And then I just simply say proceed. And it's going to want to update. So let me put a date in here that's valid. And I'm going to go ahead and preview this. And this shows me the reversal out there. So this is my reverse check run register. You'll see the 3 checks that are out there. It's reversing. Close that. It shows me my GL account. So it's going to put the money back into cash, and it's going to put it back into the accounts payable account. I want to update that. And then I want to print my daily transaction register. And update this real quick. And then now if I quickly jump into vendor maintenance, I think one of those vendors was here, invoices. Let's see. Here's my check that was run, and you'll see there's my reversal right there. And if I look at my invoices, here was when the payment initially was made, and then here's where it got reversed back out. And then now it's got the balance back out there of $25,000. Okay, so that's the ability to reverse an entire AP check run. I want to show you guys the ability to receive multiple POs on a single receipt of goods or invoice. So I'm going to go into purchase order for this one, and I'm going to go into receipt of goods entry, and I'm going to start a receipt. And when I pick a PO number here, and let me pick one that has a vendor that has a PO that has multiple POs out there for a vendor. So I'll pick this one here for United. Screen all looks similar here, except for there's this little green plus box right here. And this is the ability to apply purchase orders. So if I click on that, it's going to show me all of my POs out there for this vendor. It's going to show me what the status of it is. So this one that's already checked that I'm on is back ordered. So there's still stuff to be received on it. The next one's complete. So if I tried to pick that, it's going to warn me and say, this order's been complete. Are you sure you want to continue? And I'll say no, because it's already completed. And this one is back ordered as well. You also have the ability of saying receive complete, which means it'll make the receipt quantity equal to the quantity that is back ordered or the quantity that has been ordered. And when I say OK, I now come to my lines tab, and you'll see it has received in the amount that's equal to the amount ordered. And if you notice down here at the bottom, it'll tell me what PO it came from. So this is on purchase order number 10028, and this is on purchase order 10030. So if this is something you're going to use a lot, you could always drag and drop that feature or that PO number right up there at top so you could see that if you wanted to. Okay. This is just warning me because this is a lot or serial item, so it's going to want me to distribute that. I'm not going to go through the entire process right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and cancel this. That's the main part of that feature, is just showing you how you get into it, where it's at. So I won't finish through the entire update there. One of the things we talked about was the ability to retain paid invoices by months versus by days. So whether I go into accounts payable or accounts receivable, go into the options, and on this one, on the AR, it's under the history tab. Well, I thought it was. Hold on, let's see. No, right here. Sorry, it's on the additional tab. Months to retain paid invoices. And so I can pick a month there versus days. That kind of makes more sense because you're not that way purging off a partial month based on the number of days you said to maintain it. So you can now do that by months. Okay, move on to a couple more here. Let's talk about some 2021 specific changes here. I'm going to jump out into Library Master and go into company maintenance. Okay, and when I'm in company maintenance and I'm on a company, there is now this company type field that has been added here. And you'll see you have the ability of saying that it's a live company, it's an archive company, it's a demo company, or it's a test company, just by that drop down right there. And then one of the other things we talked about was how you could then change your preferences to show next to the company what type of company it was. So you'll notice the ABC company is set to be a demo company. So notice right up here at top where it's in prior versions, it would just have parentheses ABC. Now it's going to say ABC-demo because I said to display the company type next to it. Also down here in your status or your status bar of your launcher, your desktop, it'll also show you whether it's a demo, a live, an archive, or a test company as well. Okay. The ability to override companies was a thing we talked about in role maintenance. Let me jump into role maintenance and we'll talk about a couple things here. Sorry. In here. So I'm going to bring up a role, and I'm going to go to security, and I'm going to go to Library Master, and right here, allow delete / overwrite of live / archive companies. So that was one of the new features we talked about in 2021, where you can prevent people from accidentally overriding live or archive companies by not giving them access to that feature. And even if you do have access to that feature, like this admin role does, it still will warn you that, are you sure you want to override this live or archive company? Okay. Some other things inside of role maintenance here. Let's go in here and look at, if I cancel this and I click on my my flashlight, or sorry, my magnifying glass here, you'll see I only have one role out there, the admin role that I created. If I click on the flashlight here, these are all those role templates that are created by the system by default. And you'll see I have an AP admin, an AP clerk, an AR admin, an AR clerk. So you're going to see that kind of theme kind of running through all these modules. Okay, you have a GL admin, a GL clerk, and when you pick these templates, there's certain things that are turned on or off by default. How Sage set these for you. Okay, so that's your templates out there. And if you go to create a new one, and you say copy, you can copy from a role template. So I could copy from one of these role templates, or I could copy from an existing role. But let's pick one of the role templates, since that's the new feature we're talking about here. And I can say whether to copy the task, which is the tab 1 here, whether to copy the security options, which is tab 2. And if I had the features turned on for SData and ODBC security, I could copy them as well. And when I copy that, I now have a new role called test. That's the accounts payable clerk template. And then from there, I can start making changes as need be. Okay. Let's talk about real quickly here on that build search index feature. This is where it rebuilds the item name, vendor name, customer name search capabilities. Because as you add new ones, they don't get added to that search feature by default. When you run this, you can say whether to do it only for live, archive, demo, or test, or pick or choose the ones you want, or say all. And then when I proceed, it'll just run for the ones that I told it to. And then for the companies that were all flagged as live, there were 0 that needed to be added. It just gives you an update there. Okay. One other thing I meant to show you real briefly when I was in company maintenance. Let me jump back in here for 1 minute. When I do go to create or copy a company to a new company. So let's say I'm going to create a test company. And I already did that one, so let me cancel that. Let me just create a TS2 company here. We call this test company. And I'll say that this is a test company. And I'm going to say copy. And I want to pick that I want to copy from the ABC company. So when this comes up, this is always shown where you had the ability of copying the data by module. You had the ability of copying your forms by module. And we only have one custom form, and that's in the AP, so that's why this shows up as an option. The new thing that's been added is this reports column here. And in the ABC company, we don't have any custom reports or custom report settings out there, so they all show as NA. But if they did, we'd be able to pick and choose by module what report settings we wanted to copy over from the ABC company, the source company here, to our TS2 company, our destination company. Okay, so that was added there. One of the features I think is really nice is that purchases clearing report by date. So I'm going to go out the purchase order module, and I'm going to go out the period end, and I'm going to go and run this option called purchases clearing from history report. And when I run this, this is where I can basically say exclude transactions after X. So we're sitting on, middle of June here now. I want to know what my purchases clearing report was as of the end of May. So I say exclude transactions dated after 5/31, and this is 2025 because that's when the demo data is sitting out there. And then when I run this report, you're going to see it's going to look just like the other purchase clearing report for the most part, but it will show only the transactions through this 5/31/2025 date, so that when I go to the last page and I look at what is out there for the report total, that in theory is the number I would use to now reconcile to my purchases clearing GL account at the end of May. Okay, so it just excludes those transactions dated beyond that date. So this is 85.40. And if I just ran the regular purchase clearing that you're used to now, which is still out there, this has 33 or 37.30. Okay, so you'll see how it starts filtering out transactions and showing you the data as of 5/31, where this is as of today. Okay. Let's see. I want to go over one more thing here, and then we can jump into some questions and answers here in a little bit. So inside of Sage 100, there is there's a hidden utilities menu that you can run. So underneath the file run, there's this star UTL menu. And be careful when you run any of these out there to make sure you kind of really know what you're doing. But the two new ones that are added here are this AP Open Invoice Payments Today utility and AR Open Invoice Payments utility. So that takes care of that, Payments Today flags that we talked about earlier, where if you're in cash receipts and you're trying to receive cash against an invoice and it's showing you that it has a balance of 0 that you can receive against, but when you look at it in customer maintenance, it's showing you that the balance is still out there. That's what this utility is for. So when you run this, you want to make sure that nobody is in on the AR side, things like cash receipts, invoice data entry, things like that. I would also make sure that there's no cash receipts in process. And on the AP side, I would make sure there's no check printing in process. But when you select it and you run it, just say this utility verifies that it's set correctly. And it just gives you a warning before running this. Just like I kind of said, make sure nobody's in invoice data entry, check electronic payment maintenance or manual check and payment entry, and then say proceed. And that will clear those flags for us. Okay, so all it's doing is clearing those flags. You can run that feature at any time. Again, I would just make sure you have no cash receipts in process when you run the AR one, and make sure you have no check printing in process when you run the AP one. Okay. I think that hits the main ones I wanted to kind of go over. Let me just kind of scroll through here again real quick and see. Let's see, we can look at this real quick. On the inventory management, we talked about the default date range. That's defined out in inventory setup options. And on the additional tab here, right here, transaction date search, default selection, current period, or we can say last 7 days, last 30 days or newer, last 60 days or newer, so on and so forth. So if I pick something like last 90 days or newer and say accept, and then I jump out here into item maintenance and go to here, see how that now starts filtering here. Last 90 days or newer, and it's telling me my dates are 3/19/2021 through the end of time, because it's anything newer. So it's nothing older than that. Okay. I have the ability, though, of still going into my search here and saying I still want all is my option. And when I say okay, it'll refresh that just like we did before. But prior versions of Sage, it only kind of showed you your current month here, whatever the current month was based on your inventory setup options. This just gives you a little more flexibility of what transactions you want to look at. Okay. I think that goes through pretty much everything I wanted to kind of demo for you guys. So let's jump back into here for a second. And let me flip-flop this again. So we will move on to any questions that you guys might have. And we can kind of take a look at them. So let's see here. Looks like we have one question out there. So retiring the classic desktop, will we be able to run the Explorer customized reports? Using 2019, these don't work. Explore customizable reports. I guess I'm not exactly sure. Will we be able to run the Explore customizable reports? I'm not sure what that is. I will, hey Russ, we'll follow up with you and talk about that a little bit further. So I'm not sure what you're asking on that. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Just go ahead and send them into the chat there. Okay. So another question here of how long has the 2020 version been out? Like when was it released? It was released towards the end of April, so it's going on 2 months now since it has been released. So yeah, so it's about 2 months out now. Okay. In that same vein, has there been any product updates released yet for the 2021 version? There has not as of today. It's still just a standard install. There has not been a product update released yet. My guess is you probably would see one in the next month or so, but as of now, there have been no product releases for 2021. Any other questions while we're here? Okay. All right. So if there's no other questions, then I want to thank you guys for attending today's webinar. Hopefully it was beneficial to show you guys the new features in the 2020 and the 2021 versions of Sage 100. If you have any further questions or you want to discuss this further, you can contact us. Just reach out to whoever your account manager is at Martin & Associates. They'd be glad to help you. Or you can reach out to me. Again, my name is Joe Gupser, and there is my email address. Okay. Thank you guys for attending, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.